All right, we're ready on my end. 3, 2, 1, rolling. All right, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Wildcard Week.
So basically, how Wildcard Week works is basically every fourth episode, instead of going over an album, we go over either an EP from the EP chart, or we go over an album that's not on the top 10, just one of our personal favorites. So this week we're going over.
There's actually like a few topics, but I have a random picker that like picks one of the few topics we have, and this is one of them.
So
which is
this
the EP charts.
And so for this episode, we're doing the number one EP on the Rate Music EP charts, which is Slow Riot for New Zerø Kanada by Godspeed You, Black Emperor.
Yep.
So, Cameron, you're obviously the most experienced with this EP, so I think you should start us off with the first track, Moya.
Yeah, Moya is like really, it's like a really high tier song for me, in my opinion. It has a really, the first like, just like the ambient bits at the beginning are like, they have a really good chord progression. Since this is Godspeed You, Black Emperor, once you delve into their discography, you realize that kind of like, they basically don't change all that much, but they have a working formula and they go with it, which is to have a really long, like, kind of like indie rock mixed with like orchestral music song, but like with a very long and with a lot of build up, basically, which is what post-rock is minus the strings, and it's really it's a really good formula. The build-ups are always great on Godspeed You, Black Emperor songs. People don't talk about the drumming as much when they talk about Godspeed, but the drumming is just generally awesome in their music, and there's this one melody after like so after the payoff happens, it kind of slows down for a bit, and there's like a new melody that comes in, and it's just a fantastic melody. And then I love the way the song closes out with like the strings playing the second melody, and obviously the strings are fantastic, and don't have much else to say. So
yeah, the strings are definitely my favorite part of the album. Coleman, do you want to go?
Yeah. I will say that this album is dominated by strings. I noticed, as for Moya, it has the same chord progression for the first 3 3/4 minutes, as Cameron pointed out. What I really actually noticed about this album about 4 minutes in, because I'm a percussionist, right? I noticed I heard a glockenspiel playing, and the glockenspiel,
yeah, I did as well,
was playing the same rhythm as the guitar. They were essentially doubling, but they weren't doubling the same notes. They were kind of playing a harmony. So that I actually really liked that part of the piece. The drumming in this is very loud and very like, it's almost kind of like hard rock or heavy metal kind of drumming, like like that kind of thing. That's. Mm-hmm. The build-ups are great on this album. I definitely agree. It's very slow and very dramatic and deliberate. And that's my take on Moya.
So, basically, when you're gonna hear my opinions on this EP, I'm very conscious. My opinions on this EP are very controversial, to say the least. It opened up. It was interesting with the low growing notes in the beginning and the tension. Again, I love the strings, the violins playing a melody over the single note playing the cello and viola.
Yeah.
And as the string section subside, the quiet guitars come in, and at the beginning it was really interesting, but it got really repetitive really quickly. And
yeah, you'll notice with me that like repetitiveness isn't always like a problem for me. I like repetitive music myself, so
it isn't a problem until it becomes so overly repetitive that it just becomes boring. I love the bass in the right ear ringing, because as you know, I absolutely love bass. And as the drums came in, it's sort of a jam with the drums coming in. I did enjoy the drumming. I wish they made the drumming more prominent. It was really quiet, but
I mean, obviously this is my opinion, but I did find the first 3 3/4 minutes boring of this song. It was really just the same chord
Yeah.
progression, but there were quite a lot of things that I noticed and I liked about this first song. So yeah.
Yeah, I also paid a lot of attention to the glockenspiel when it led into the
Yeah, the
song picking up.
glockenspiel wasn't as prominent to me, but I mean, I'm not a percussionist.
It wasn't very prominent, but it added a lot of detail.
I think it's because it's so unique that I really noticed it, because really the only the highest pitched instruments in this entire album are the strings and probably the guitar. So to add that little glockenspiel in there that you don't hear ever again in the album, or maybe I don't know, I could be wrong. I didn't hear a glockenspiel for the rest of the album, but that was a very nice touch in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't really hear glockenspiels too much other than in classical, but this has a lot of influence with the strings part. So, I love the string solo and the song picked up and became a jam, but the track was very unchanging. It was the same throughout. Even though the music did change a bit, it had the same feeling, and it just wasn't very interesting to me. But I did enjoy how the strings closed it out. I gave this track a 6 out of 10.
So give me a second. I have actually a story to tell about this song. Just give me a second. I need to do something.
Mm-hmm. So, Coleman, what do you give for your score on this song?
For this song, I don't even know.
You're gonna hear a bit of interference for a second.
What would I give this song? I would probably give it 6.5 out of 10. But that's obviously, this is just personal. Nobody has to share my opinions. I recommend that people don't share my opinions on some things. But for me, it's a 6.5 out of 10.
Yeah. I definitely did enjoy the second track more.
The second track was really nuts, to be honest. The second track, especially just the poetry and all this stuff. We'll get to that later, though. Yeah.
So, what was your story, Cameron?
Before I say my story, I think this is a 10 out of 10 song. I just love it a lot. Anyways, yeah, I feel like I seem really overly positive on this podcast. I just happen to have listened to most of the albums in the top 5 or so for a long time. Once we get past that, I'm gonna start being less biased. Anyways, this one, I think I really like it, but actually this year I synced up the start of 2020 with the payoff happening in this song. Not really much to say about it.
Wait, so the crab rave kind of thing?
I don't know, I just played it so that right when the payoff happens, the clock turns to 12 o'clock at January 1st.
So that's what people did with the crab rave.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah. I did that with watching the Avengers. I played it so that Thanos snapped right at midnight. So anyway, let's go on to the next song. Blaze Bailey Finnegan III.
I don't like this one quite as much personally, but we're gonna get into that.
So, I love how it seamlessly transitioned from Moya.
Yeah, that's one thing I do like about this.
The feeling at the beginning, although it felt very similar to the beginning of Moya with an eerie, soft minor sound, but it was still grounded. This album was very grounded compared to some of the other tracks that we've listened to before on this podcast, which are more airy from a band like Radiohead. And the beginning's very repetitive yet again, But what was so interesting was the man talking in the background. I have
some conflicting opinions on this part, which I'll get into.
I found myself listening to the man talking in the background more than I actually found myself listening to the actual music. I felt the story that he was talking about the American government and all that. Is clearly some political stuff, which I'm not gonna go into politics on this podcast. But it was a very
I'm gonna try my best not to completely reveal everything that I think about politics.
It was a very interesting perspective per se, and it feels like they clearly were trying to go for a meaning there. And most people, when they would be listening to this song, they would just be thinking, "Oh, cool, there's some dude talking in the background for some extra added effects." But to be honest, it was super interesting to listen to, and I would listen to that guy talk without music. If the thought that came into my head was like a late 60-year-old man from the country with a scruffy beard, and there was like a mid.
This guy feels like this guy gives me the vibe of like Alex Jones, but with like the opposite political views.
Yeah.
Almost.
And
Yeah, kinda.
I
I
imagine
see
like he was talking to some dude from the big city, right? And the guy from the big city just like doesn't understand what's going on in his life. And
Yeah, there are a lot of spoken word bits in Godspeed's music.
I mean,
Yeah.
what we can gather from this is that this guy, or whoever, it's a guy, obviously, it's a man's voice, that this person does not like the government, pretty much despises the government, and one of the recurring themes of his speech, or I guess you could say mantra, is that he thinks that America is a third world country. He says that a lot.
Yeah.
He says we're, he says I can't believe people don't think we're a third world country, that kind of thing.
This is very topical for considering what's going on in the world today. And it felt like when they're writing this in 1990, people would think, right, when they listen to this, like, oh my god, they predicted the future? They actually found out something like this would be going on in 1999? Yet they don't realize the same problems were going on, they just weren't in the mainstream.
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna try to keep stay as uncontroversial as possible. I just want to say this person thinks that everybody in government is bad. I think that I don't think that that's true. I think there are some people who are willing to help the country, and then there are some people who just care about money and care about other things. That's what I think. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, but I think especially when I came to think of this guy, this guy, I imagined that he was living in the 1960s, 1970s in the countryside. And clearly in the 1960s and the 1970s, we had people that, were in the government.
Oh yeah, there've been revolutions happening all throughout history, obviously. And there were some happening around then. It
feels like this guy was living in a time where there was corruption in the government, and it led to not good things happening in the world. And yeah.
Okay. So I like the energy of this guy, and like without getting too like into politics and stuff, a lot of what he's saying I do like kind of agree with. But the two things stick out to me with this speech. The first one being the part about like handing in a speeding ticket, and like he basically just like started a fight with the judge or something, and it didn't make any like, it just seemed kind of like really over exaggerated.
It sounds like a story like a middle-aged farmer from like the Midwest would tell you, and I think it added a lot to the aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
What really struck me about this, when he was in the courtroom, what he said to the judge. Obviously, the theme is he just wanted to give the money and get the hell out of there, right? But what really struck me was when he said, if they thought I was dangerous on the road like you're trying to accuse me of, wouldn't they have taken my license when I first got it? Yes, they would. That's his quote from the song, and like, that makes a lot of sense. Really, it does.
Yeah, and the second thing that sticks out to me that you guys might not have noticed initially is the poem that he recites a poem that he supposedly wrote earlier. But apparently the lyrics to that poem were actually the lyrics to an Iron Maiden song from beforehand. So.
Oh really?
Iron Maiden lyrics.
You know which Iron Maiden song?
I don't actually know. I've just heard this. I think, but I did remember I looked at like the Genius page for the song, whatever song they listed, and it was the same. So.
Oh, actually, I'm gonna check it out.
We can verify this.
I do like Iron Maiden a lot. And when he was talking about how, yes, I do own a high-powered assault rifle, I own a 12-gauge dual-barrel shotgun, I thought it was actually somebody else talking. It's like, this doesn't align with the views. But then I realized it kind of does. He's so skeptical of the government that he owns all these weapons to try to, fight against them.
Yeah, sometimes he seems like he's contradicting himself. And then when you think about it, his actions kind of align with his views a little more than you initially thought.
The name Blaze Bayley came from the name of Iron Maiden singer Blaze Bayley.
Oh.
It
was intentional.
Yeah, and then the words from the words came from the Iron Maiden song "Virus." I love Iron Maiden; they're one of my favorite metal bands, and so I'd always be happy with an Iron Maiden reference in my song. But we spent so much time talking about the actual speaking.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about the actual music.
That's like 5 minutes of like a 20-minute song. So.
Yet again, it was very, very repetitive. I loved how the viola and cello, when they had the tremolo right on top of the more like an echoing drum roll. I couldn't tell if it was a timpani or some other bass drum. But it was a very large drum and it was rolling over the tremolo. That was very interesting. And again, the strings. I love the strings, and the dissonant guitarist. But again, it was super repetitive. It kind of was a jam at the part where it picked up, but. Other than that, I didn't find it too interesting.
For me, this album was a jam at
It was a jam for
only,
a few certain parts.
Like a third of each song was a jam. That's for me. That's what it was.
I listen to music for fun, and this music, it might be like some sort of masterpiece of songwriting or whatever, but it just wasn't very fun to listen to. That's my take.
I disagree, but I like ambient sections and stuff, so. My personal thing.
If I'm being honest, I would never voluntarily play this again for myself. But that's just me. It's just my opinion.
I don't play the second track that much for myself, but I do listen to the first one a lot.
I respect the musicianship and I respect the creativity. It's just, this album overall isn't for me. That's the way I would put it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So my score for this song. It was 7 out of 10. If it was just the music, I think I would have given it a 5 out of 10. But the talking bumped it up a whole 2 points. That's how interesting it was.
Jerry, I think you hit it right on the head. I would give it a 7 out of 10 as well because it's just narrowly better than Moya in my opinion.
I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 personally. I like it, but it doesn't differentiate itself enough from Moya in my opinion. I think the main thing that
they were both
makes
very
it
similar.
Better than a 7 out of 10 is the spoken word section.
No.
And also I like the payoff because it's really loud and the strings in the payoff are great.
If I wasn't looking at the track listing, let's say somebody just put a blank record on a record player, started playing it with no case, I would think that it was just one extended song with 2 sections.
Yeah.
Compared to 2 different tracks.
Kind of like Pink Floyd. That's kind of exactly like Dark Side of the Moon, like we did last week.
Although, if you guys did not thought this, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on their most famous album, which is "Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven." That song is all made up of 4 20-minute tracks, but in my opinion, the ones on "Lift Your Skinny Fists" are a lot more varied and stuff. Like they're not as repetitive. But
yeah,
I haven't heard that album before.
Repetition is a lot of times repetition can be a very aspect to add, but there comes to a point where repetition it can only be so artsy before it becomes boring music. And in my opinion, the goal of music can be like a brilliant art form, but in my opinion, the goal of music isn't to be a brilliant art form. The goal of music is to have fun and make things that people enjoy.
Yeah.
And so but to each his own. Some people enjoy listening to the very interesting aspects that make your mind think, where other people want to just sit back, listen to music, jam out. And I like a bit of both, but and there's albums like Radiohead where it's more of a thinking album, which I really like. But I think something like
you can also balance this really well.
It just goes too far, the needing to think about it compared to just having fun listening to it.
For example, Radiohead is definitely a band that makes songs that are both pretty accessible, but also pretty intricate once you look into it.
I think a band like Pink Floyd actually has the perfect balance between the two. And you take a band like this, or it's all the way on the thinking side, compared to a band like, I don't know, what's a band that's all the way on the just fun music side?
Ooh,
King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, definitely a band on the just all fun side. Yeah. Basically,
I don't know.
Their music isn't horribly complex, or original, but it's just awesome and fun.
Yeah,
Blink 182 has. I mean, it's okay. I don't know the lyrics to any songs from Blink 182.
I think the most just pure no complexity fun band I can think of is the Ramones, because they basically write the same song every time, same 3 chords. but like it's a pretty good formula.
You're right. You're on a long road trip. You play the Ramones on the car radio, and it's a jam for everybody. And it's two ends of a spectrum, and
and then you can have an artist like I'm trying to think of an artist that's just not fun. Oh, definitely Trout Mask Replica for me is something that is very interesting to listen to, and also is I hate listening to it because it just sounds awful.
Yeah.
You wanna know a band that gets into that really like talks about some deep concepts of like depth and drugs and depression and stuff, but also has really good music. Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains is like my favorite band of all time, my favorite musical group of all time.
I'm pretty sure Alice in Chains' album Jar of Flies is also like pretty high up on this EP tier list.
Is in my opinion
EP music list.
Jar of Flies, in my opinion, is the most flawless EP to have ever been made. It's just every time I think of Jar of Flies, it's such a good album that I want to listen to it again now.
I don't know what my favorite EP is actually. Like, I don't think about. Let me look at my.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, to be honest.
I think that's my. No, you know what? You know what else is a great EP by Alice in Chains? Sap. Sap and Jar of Flies are pretty phenomenal.
So yeah, the number Jar of Flies is number 4 EP on the whole list. I think my number 1 EP, my favorite EP personally, I'm not really sure. Probably Magical Mystery Tour, to be honest.
Yeah, Magical Mystery Tour is like honestly my favorite Beatles thing.
Magical Mystery Tour is insanely. It's not like the biggest brain thing that the Beatles have made, but they're just so fun to. It's just so fun to listen to. I Am the Walrus, Goob Goob Gajoob, Goob Goob Gajoob. That's what I'm gonna say about it.
Well, but also I believe aren't Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields on that album too?
Yes, they are.
Those are masterpiece songs, and those take a lot of brain cells to make.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so what do we give this album as a whole in terms of score?
I'd give this album as a whole, and like, it was a 9 before, but I'm like honestly like after re-listening to this, I think it's an 8 now for me. My personal score was a 6.5 out of 10. Barely, it's on the line of passing. It passes, but it's just in my opinion, it's fairly uninteresting and repetitive with a few bright spots.
I agree with Jerry's description exactly. For me, this is an easy rating. It just averaged a 6.5 and 7. I'm just giving it a 6.75 out of 10 for me. It has some pretty good build-ups and some nice touches like the glockenspiel and the guy who's rebellious toward the government. But overall, it's for me, it doesn't do much for me other than that. If you guys don't like repetitive music, I worry for when we reach like our first Swans album on this list. Actually, no, my favorite EP of all time is the number 141 ranked EP, Emerson String Quartet, Shostakovich String Quartet number 8. Yeah, I don't know why I can't think of my favorite EP right now. So I'm just gonna say that is. The Emerson String Quartet, I saw them in a concert once, and the music school I go to actually is Zerø. It might honestly be Steroids by Death Grips. That might be my favorite EP. The music school I go to is very close ties to Emerson, so that's cool. Also, the number 166 ranked EP is K-pop. What? The number 166 ranked EP is K-pop. Yeah. Huh. Surprisingly, Rate Your Music doesn't hate K-pop as much as you would think they do. I've lost faith in humanity now that. Thank you, Jerry, for telling me that. I just completely lost any faith I had in humanity now that I learned that K-pop is revered by. It's people. Not really revered. Oh, it's not revered so much as the 208th ranked EP is Creator. I saw Creator in concert. That was fun. I saw Fleetwood Mac. I saw Fleetwood Mac in 2015 on their reunion tour at Nassau Coliseum. That was amazing. So this should be fucking illegal. One of the number 130 EP is the first 6 tracks from The Money Store, which were like released early. That's dumb because it should be counted as like, I don't know. There should be some like. I guess it's an EP. I guess it's like technically an EP. But it just annoys me because like. The number 265 EP is by Kamasi Washington, Harmony of Difference. Kamasi Washington. A real EP. It's just like part of it's just half of an album.
Anyways.
Monty Washington is absolutely my favorite jazz artist, so that's a nice one. We're going on a complete tangent here, so I think...
I think it's about time to close this out. Like,
Yeah, I think so.
So
this has been our shortest episode yet.
Next week we're going back
Next week we're going back to our regular series of the
with
top 10. We're
Pink Floyd.
doing Wish You Were Here.
Are you sure you don't want to hit the 30-minute mark? We're like 2 minutes away. We can just like, I don't know.
We're actually like 5 minutes away, so...
Okay, so...
Oh, this is 28 on here. Whatever.
Alright, anyways.
See you all next week. Bye.
See you next week, everybody. Goodbye.
See you next week.
Thanks for watching our video. In the description, you can find links to our Twitter, our Rate Your Music list, as well as links to the music that we review in this video, and the background music from the lovely artist over at Nightlight Tapes. And see you all in the next episode.